With that, I'd like to introduce Dr. David Francko.
Thanks, everyone. First, I'm honored to be here, and I want to thank the search committee led by Drs. White and Carnell, and all of you who have come out to this open forum to talk with me for taking some of your valuable time and sharing it with all of us. Now, I'm going to start out with apologies to the search committee who's heard this little intro before, but I want to start out by saying that several years ago there was an article that I read in the Chronicle of Higher Education that talked about interviewing for a higher administrative position, do's and don'ts, and it basically said, when interviewing for a senior administrative position, by all means do not be too enthusiastic, and by all means do not be too specific or candid with your answers to the audience, lest you be tripped up and thought to be some kind of a fool. Well, I'm going to violate both of those rules today. First, I am very enthusiastic about Cleveland State, its future in the next several years. I have seen from looking at your website and other documentation significant progress that you have made as a community to tackle some really tough issues facing the institution its service area. And as a Cleveland native with family in the area, my wife Diane and I get back up here about twice a year from Alabama, and it's been really exciting to see CSU grow over the decades from a local commuter school to an institution that's fast becoming an urban university of choice, not just for students from Cleveland, but from the rest of Ohio, the nation, and even internationally, who want a 21st century engaged education. So when I look at Cleveland State in 2013, I see an institution making a comprehensive across-the-board commitment to doubling its retention and graduation numbers, while at the same time being able to report that it's tripled its research funding in the last 3 years. I ask you to find me another university in the United States that has been able to do both of those things simultaneously, and I don't think you're going to find one. So my enthusiasm is genuine, and with that enthusiasm in mind, I'm going to now violate the second interviewing rule by candidly discussing with you my vision for CSU as your prospective provost. And I can make this very simple with you. My vision for Cleveland State is a full realization of your vision for the institution, so that 5 years from now, in 2018, you and I can sit down over a cup of coffee and reflect on all the great things that had transpired at this institution over the intervening 5-year period. Let me be clear. I'm not here, in other words, to come to Cleveland State as your new provost so that I can accomplish the Dave Francko agenda for excellence. I'm not here to do that. Rather, for me as a candidate for provost, the beauty of CSU in 2013 is very simple. You have developed a collective vision for where you want to go as a university. In partnering with stakeholders in the Cleveland area and the region, and that vision is encapsulated in all of the position description verbiage that I've seen for your next provost. And so in a very real sense, my vision is really our vision, should I come here. So let me speak about our vision if I were your next provost. Our vision has been shaped and continues to be shaped by a collaboration, and I underline the term collaboration, of senior leadership, faculty, staff, students, and other stakeholders. Our vision is robust, and in the words of your president, it's a transformative vision towards excellence as a nationally prominent, engaged urban university of choice that places premium emphasis on student learning and outcomes and is a major player in economic development for Ohio and the rest of the state. This is a vision of CSU and not the University of Cincinnati, Akron, or Toledo as the best urban universities in Ohio, and the key institution helping to lead Greater Cleveland back to prominence as the keystone city in Ohio for quality of life and economic development potential. And I'm old enough to remember the best location in the nation moniker. I would like to see that moniker be used again in the 21st century to recognize the city of Cleveland. And I have a personal stake in this. I have 3 sisters, they have families, and every single one of my sisters who all still live in this area is deliberately and linearly tied to the progress that this institution's been making the last few years, through supplies for your building projects, through other activities that are going on that are enriching the economy and providing jobs. So I have a very personal stake in this institution becoming even greater. Now that collective vision, a fully engaged CSU leading a revitalized Cleveland and Ohio, is worth working hard for your next president or next provost, because it will bear tremendous fruit for Cleveland State, but also for the university's communities beyond the boundaries of our campus as it approaches its 50th anniversary and well beyond. So why would anyone want to mess with that with a different vision? No, as a first-generation college student, a native son of the Cleveland area, I'm here because I share your vision for Cleveland State. I believe that what's going on can be facilitated by the things that I've learned in administration in the last several years, and to partner with you to make that happen. So anyway, if enthusiasm for the position or the personal agenda that becomes your agenda somehow disqualifies me for public service, then that's fine. I can live with that. I want to talk about some specific experiences and skills that I think I can bring to the table, because realizing this vision that you've laid out in your documentation is not going to be easy. It's going to be really hard. If it was easy, it would have already happened years ago. And I'm hearing about, already on my interview, about some problems that are going on and all that. Everybody's got them. It's just that they differ from one campus to another. And so what experiences and skills can I bring to the table to help the CSU community be successful? Well, first and foremost, I think the reason I have solid faith in what you are endeavoring to do here, working out in the next several years, stems in large part from the last almost 7 years that I've spent at University of Alabama, which does differ from this school in some significant ways. It's about twice as many students, and it's a flagship campus rather than an urban campus, but it's the same Carnegie classification. It's a student-centered university like yours is, and it has a strong urban core to it. And working at UA, I've had firsthand experience in seeing the tremendous things that can happen when people of good faith work together collaboratively, with an emphasis on the term collaboratively, to implement a shared vision, not my vision, not your vision, not this person's vision, but a shared vision that enhances the institution's strengths and also collaboratively owns up to and solves the problems that are vexing it. And at UA, that has largely resulted in the past decade in us being freed from the dictates of state funding. We have a $140 million funding cut from the state of Alabama since 2008. Our budget has gone up $250 million. We've had raises every year. We've added net new faculty, and we've done that by changing the paradigm. That can happen here at Cleveland State. It's all about walking the walk as well as talking the talk, and the thing that impresses me about your institution is everything that I read and learn about you says that that's how you operate here as well. You've got progress on your student retention plan. You've got the development of the NeoMed tie-in and campus, the arts campus, the Center for Innovation in Health Professions, to even more progress as an engaged campus. All of these make it clear that for all the problems that this institution has, you are walking the walk, and it would be fun to help you in that expertise. Now, time and time again in your position description and the other things about what you want in a provost, you talk about emphasizing the need for your provost to be a person that understands that they're here to facilitate and serve as well as to lead. So what does service mean to me, and how do I see it relating to the position that you're recruiting? Well, first and foremost, you need to know that as far as I'm concerned, for most of my career, I've been a card-carrying faculty member who happens to spend a great deal of time in administration. And the fulfillment for me in administration is in being able to solve those vexing problems that all of us have as faculty members but don't have the ability to solve. So somebody comes to me as associate provost or dean, my biggest fun in the job is being able to say, well, that's pretty stupid. Why do we do that? And if I don't get a good answer, I have the authority to actually change that practice. And that is really a fun thing to have. But because I still teach every year, I teach part of a freshman course, not a graduate course, because I still work on my own intellectual property. I still publish papers. I know what it's like to be a teacher scholar. I know what it's like to develop students as student scholars, and that model of development for students and faculty comes very naturally to me, and there's no inconsistency with being an administrator, because if I make up some new rule or regulation, I've got to do it too. I have to fill out the FAR every year. I have to fill out my syllabus corrections every year. I have to do the stuff for intellectual property like everyone else, and it makes a difference, I think. Now, Michael Crow, who's the president of Arizona State, gave an address a little while ago, and I'll kind of, before we get into the specific goals, just mention one thing. He's got a lot of kind of harebrained ideas, but he's got a really good analogy that I want to share with you. Our enterprise, academic enterprise at a university, is like a 747 traveling at 35,000 feet with a full load of passengers who fully expect to get to the destination that they paid to get to. We've got to get those passengers to where that plane's going to land. Unfortunately, the plane is breaking down around us and becoming obsolete as it flies through the air. And our task as educators, administrators, students, staff, everybody associated with the enterprise, is to fix it while it is in flight, because we do not have the option to take it down and put it into dry dock and fix it that way. So we have to become knowledge enterprise architects, a fancy term that really means that we fix the educational enterprise on the fly while it is moving forward and graduating students, and hopefully make it better and better through time. And that's what I am. I'm more of an architect. I am not a caretaker. I don't polish the brass, because the challenges of the future require us to be inventive and creative in making the academy new and not just cleaning up and fixing things that are broken. But I do that by respecting the academic culture of each unit that I work with. We have a very decentralized institution that I work with. I couldn't make any progress if I tried to make the engineering folks act like the English folks and so on and so forth. So I understand that. I don't believe in the no-win scenario when it comes to problem solving. I am like Captain Kirk in the Kobayashi Maru scenario. A few of you might be Star Trek fans out there. When I'm faced with a no-win scenario, my inclination is how can we get around that and get through the problem by another way? And that's really what we've been doing at the University of Alabama in a very large sense. We've been stressed by a tornado that destroyed 7 square miles of our city. I personally knew the faculty at the University of Alabama Huntsville when there was a shooting in biological sciences. I've had to deal with that. I know how to deal with crises. I know how to go around and fix things that absolutely need to be fixed. I am not a me-centered person. I believe in saying yes rather than yes, but. And I absolutely believe in the three-legged stool of fiscal management. That is, I almost always say yes if the person proposing the solution or the way of doing something different is willing to put some of their resources forward, and there is a third party that will also join me, because a three-legged stool is very stable. I'm more interested in listening rather than talking, and I believe in treating people as I would like to be treated, and it's amazing how far you can get with just that attitude. Now let me close, and before we go into questions, on what I think the 3 specific foci are that would merit our special attention in order to achieve success in this big picture transformative vision. First of all, embracing and accomplishing your goals for retention and graduation. That's absolutely job 1. You have an excellent blueprint in the student retention plan. You have timelines, you have who's responsible, you have actions, et cetera, that are there and are already being acted on and bearing fruit. Accomplishing this as job 1. Along the way, most of your other 8 strategic initiatives will also be dealt with, involving undergraduate and graduate student success, engagement, financial stability, national prominence, all of these things fall into line. And this is a great example of the can-do spirit at the university that I'm talking about, is your student retention plan, which I have all kinds of marks on here. And it's a draft, I understand that. This is the best document of its kind that I've ever seen, because it doesn't hide your problems under a bushel basket. It seeks to solve them, and it identifies who and when that's going to happen by. Second priority, I think, moving forward across the board is an engagement partner, both on and off campus, in teaching, in research, and economic development. This is what we are very big on at UA. We are a Carnegie engagement campus, and I'm so glad that this institution's already started moving towards ratification as a Carnegie Engagement University in 2015. This will further leverage Cleveland, Northeastern Ohio's rebirth, and it will feed into retention, it will feed into financial stability, and so on. This is the hook that defines, in my view, CSU from other institutions and makes it easier to leverage each partner's assets. And finally, the third thing feeds into numbers 1 and 2, develop more fiscal sustainability and less dependence on state funds. By increasing enrollment, and that's enhancing both Northeast Ohio and targeted regional and national recruiting, graduate recruiting as well as undergraduate, and then niche opportunities, women in STEM. This institution could take a lead in recruiting women who wish to study in the STEM fields. No one else is doing that right now. Students with dependent children, a niche that we have exploited at UA to great effect. We are recruiting students specifically now because of the support we give to women who have dependent children. And more outreach to non-traditional students by distance education in the area and nationally to bootstrap continuing growth in research funding and corporate and individual giving. Opportunities are there for things that have been deficits for you. You have a lot of folks that don't finish degrees, right? They're out there and they could be finishing their degree partly by distance and partly coming here on campus, like we have at something called Back to Bama, which is a tremendous program to allow a student to complete mostly by distance with a lot of rigor. And you get these tremendous success stories that instantly make the AP wire, like Joe Namath got his degree 2 years ago after 30 years and walked across stage to get his diploma. Now, don't you think that was a Kodak moment? And we got a lot of ink out of finishing this guy. And he didn't do a watered-down degree. He did an honest-to-God bachelor's degree and did it the right way. So again, based on what I've seen, the tools, people, and will are in place to get these 3 priorities done. They will cross-pollinate the other things that you need to do. It'd be an honor and a privilege to join you in this effort as your new provost. And I want to thank you very much, and I will be happy to address questions.
All right, so we will call upon you, bring the mic to you, and you're going to stay here? Very good.
Say my name and department.
Absolutely.
Hi, I'm Susan Slotnick.
Hey, Susan.
I'm in the Department of Operations and Supply Chain Management, and I was happy to hear you mention research as one of your activities and priorities, as well as one for the organization. What I'd like to know is how you define research, how you would measure research accomplishment, and how you would support research if you were to be provost here.
Okay, that's excellent. We take a very broad view of scholarly excellence in terms of research creativity. I mean, most of you know, if you've looked at some of my credentials, as associate provost, I do program review, and I also do the first cut, well, I do the first and second cut for promotion and tenure and retention and all that sort of thing. And we have for a long time at the institution I'm at right now recognized that scholarly activity varies by discipline. And so the currency of excellence for a scholar in the English department is a nationally published book, for example, whereas in physics or biological sciences like I'm in, it's grant funding and journal articles and that sort of thing. So what we expect is excellence in the currency of that discipline when we do P&T, when we do program review, whatever. And so that's going to vary. But we also recognize that in the 21st century, everyone really should be research grant active. Even if it's only getting $500 from the Ohio Historical Society to do some archaeological work or something, if that $500 is what you need to do your work, then you really have an obligation to go out and seek that external funding. So that counts in my view as well. And doing all that in a very transparent way is extremely important to me. We were Inside Higher Ed judged Alabama's promotion and tenure system as one of 4 exemplars among research universities, and the main reason is it's very transparent. And anybody that doesn't get promoted and tenured knew they were in trouble in year 1, and it sort of perpetuated all the way through. And for recognizing things that are important, that we say are important, like engaged scholarship, counting towards promotion and tenure, just like quote-unquote traditional scholarship. So that's kind of in a nutshell what we've tried to do. Now, the other thing that's important to me and would be important if I come here is I'm not interested in grant funding for the number of significant figures that are in the grant total. It's more about the accomplishments that you manifest with your students and with your own research because of that funding. And so it only counts if it translates into accomplishments. And those accomplishments then become hopefully widely disseminated so that people know that folks at CSU are doing research that affects their lives. So a PR aspect of that is extremely important. And finally, we're going to talk about money. I'm big on leveraging. I said the three-legged stool. We've been able to more than double graduate funding during the worst recession in years, because what we were able to do was take some of the money that I have as graduate dean and leverage that with what the departments had, and then get a third partner from outside the university and leverage their money. So we've been able to add about 300 externally funded RAs, fellowships, and GAs, and I've been able then to afford to add another 300 internally funded GTAs. So we've added about 600 positions, but only one partner is putting in a small amount of money, and it's leveraging other partners to add their money in. And so during one of the worst recessions, we've been able to increase funding by 50%. But it's not me as graduate dean doing it alone. I couldn't possibly do it alone. It's by working together in the research enterprise. Okay?
One of the things I was really intrigued by in your very impressive CV is, if I understand your current position correctly, you're dean of the graduate school, and you're also the vice president sort of on personnel matters, as you're talking about. You're central to things like new faculty orientation. You say you made the first cut on promotion and tenure. That's a really intriguing combination of, I mean, I'm sort of envisioning what would happen if our current vice provost, who has those duties, were also to be dean of the graduate school. Could you tell us about kind of what the particular lessons you've learned from that very interesting combination of duties and such, and sort of what you would have to say about that?
Well, if I understand your question correctly, part of it's just time management skills, and part of it is my own fault. I kind of started getting to do things, and I apparently did them too well, and so they said, why don't you keep doing that all along? And
Many people get punished for doing things.
yeah. That's, but I find that the associate provost role in a decentralized place like I'm at right now is actually advantageous to the graduate dean's role. The two are not mutually exclusive. They really overlap a lot. So if I'm doing promotion and tenure or program review, and I'm also trying to upgrade graduate faculty standards, both of those are faculty issues. They're not graduate dean issues. Same thing with finding funding sources for our students, or working with my fellow deans in a capacity that I'm not the dean. In other words, doing some accountability things across the whole university rather than one part of it. So I found it very exhilarating, and also it's given me an experience base that a lot of folks wouldn't have. We don't have a whole bunch of people. There's basically the provost, and there's me. And then I have people that I farm stuff out to, but we don't have, an associate for this, an associate for this, and so on. And sometimes that's bad, because sometimes I spend a lot more time on that part of the shop than anything else. But it's, to me, it's a continuum, and it helps to dress it that way. I hope that helps.
Good afternoon. I'm Mitty Davis-Jones, and I'm chairperson of the Department of Urban Studies. Welcome back to Cleveland.
Thank you, thank you.
I actually have two questions. The first one has to do with the graduation and retention rate of students of color, which is significantly less than other students. And I'm wondering what kinds of programs may have been implemented at your institution that might address that disparity here, or what ideas would you have to address that?
Okay. Well, I think that's one of the things that I like about your plan to do what you're endeavoring to do, basically double a retention rate, double graduation rates, is enormously difficult. So I don't have all the answers, but I know one of the answers is a twofold one. One, you really recruit the students that you want to come to your institution. And the bylaw at Alabama during my tenure has been, we're going to grow with quality and diversity. You're a senior administrator, that's what job one is for you, not turning people away. It's to get them to come here and then find a way to afford to be able to serve them properly. So that's a different mindset than a lot of schools have. Let me tell you about this from a graduate perspective first. Our goal to answer the question is twofold. We recruit widely and we mentor widely, and we are very intrusive and in people's faces when they are not making progress towards degree. And that isn't just for students of color or for women in STEM disciplines. We try to do that with all of our students. And as a result, about half of the net growth that we've had in graduate enrollment, I can trace to better retention and not more folks coming into our graduate programs. Now, we have specific programs that address special needs folks. We recruit at every HBCU in the Southeast, but we also recruit from our network of former graduates across the world, really, for students of color, women in science disciplines, so on and so forth. And we have some mentorship programs that are specific to those audiences, and they work very well, and they are all very intrusive in a nice way. Tied Together, for example, is something that we borrowed directly from the University of Michigan. It's not our idea. And we got a small grant from the Council of Graduate Schools. We started it 4 years ago, and it brings in students from underrepresented groups, so students of color, but also first-generation college, and so on and so forth. And they are mentored by a mentee who's also a student and a faculty member, so it's very intensive. And they have a full year of activities that they have to participate in, writing boot camps and all kinds of things. We've had 100 students go through that program now, 100 students in 4 years. 2, count them, 2 are no longer in graduate school or have gotten their graduate degrees. And those 2 were international students that left and went back to their home country because they had great jobs waiting for them and they couldn't afford to pass that up. So we have 0 attrition in a demographic that traditionally has 60 to 70% attrition over that 7 years. Or that 4 years, excuse me. Why? Because none of those students get a chance to fall through the cracks. And that's what you have to do. People say, well, how did you go from 300 African-American graduate students to 700 at the University of Alabama, where George Wallace stood in the door 50 years ago and barred people from coming in? We own up to that and say, yeah, that happened. But we invite you to look at us now. And we invite you to come to our campus, and here's some money to do that. And we invite you to come to this outstanding program where you're going to be able to get a job. And we go out and we recruit, and that's what you have to do in this, and then make sure that people get a good experience. So that's some of the things that I'd like to do should I come here. Encourage those programs with support, because they're not cheap. Encourage programs that help recruit students in demographics that we want by offering really high-quality programs, and then not letting people fall through the cracks. And it can't be me doing that. It can't be you doing that. It has to be everybody in this audience working together, and the students being willing to buy in to the fact that they have to hold up their part of the bargain. If the students don't buy into the system, you're never going to get to 60%. And you know that, and I know that. So it's no magic bullet, but I think when you treat people as human beings and when you work hard to make sure that their needs are met, and you take care of some of the things that are vexing to them, again, like the Graduate Parent Support Program. We got people coming to school now specifically because we offer that help to parents with dependent children, specifically. Not because of tuition cuts, not because of anything else, but because of that one support program. And they are not expensive to operate. They are run by students for students. All you have to do is support them. Okay?
Okay, actually, the response that you gave seemed to be directed more to graduate students maybe than undergrad, although certainly some of what you said would be applicable to undergraduate students. But Cleveland State, until a few years ago, was an open enrollment university. And a few years ago, maybe 7 or 8, we instituted admission criteria. And fortunately or unfortunately, we still rely on the state for some of our funding, and that funding is based on the graduation rate of and retention of first-time, full-time freshmen, and we've had some difficulty getting our numbers up in that regard. So I'm just wondering how you would see balancing off the issues of access for students, particularly in the greater Cleveland area, and that of meeting the metrics that one of our funders, major funders, requires.
Well, first, if I gave the impression that the only thing I have experience in is graduate enhancement, that's not true. The Parent Support Program that I mentioned to started as a graduate school program and was so successful that Student Affairs co-opted it for the undergraduate population as well. So we have 2 flavors. We have one for grad students and one for undergraduate students. The second thing that we try to do with the undergraduates is to start reaching people early in their careers in high school and even junior high, and bringing them to our campus for summer experiences and academic year experiences, and start acculturating them towards success, and then making sure that they come to our university. I mean, it's and there are things like, and I don't know all the things that you're doing here, but we have something called Emerging Scholars, which is a program particularly for inner city and rural kids who don't have a lot of access to research opportunities as high school students. We get them involved with things that they can do here or with some satellite programs that we run in the local schools. Then we bring them in their freshman year on campus and do a lot of heavy mentoring and get them involved in the research enterprise. And these are at-risk kids. These are not the stars at their high schools. And it's a program of about 300 students a year, and it works very, very well. So it allows us to have excellence, but broadly defined. And so the diversity comes from recruiting for excellence and really supporting that. But most of our programs are not undergraduate alone. They transcend the whole university. So my feeling overall is if a student is good enough to get into Cleveland State University, that we ought to do our darndest to make sure that that student graduates. And if they don't graduate and it's on them, that's one thing. But if it's on us, that's something we need to change. Now, you're not going to get there automatically and you're not going to solve everything, but that's one thing that I know works, is you bring the people you want in, you recruit them, you start recruiting them very early, you bring them to campus early, you recruit their guidance counselors, you get them involved, you teach their teachers, and you do all of that, and at the end of the day, it helps. It's not any one thing. And we certainly don't have the magic bullet. But I'm convinced that this institution is the institution that needs to take a leadership role in that goal. Or the city of Cleveland is going to be poorer for it. The state of Ohio is going to be poorer for it. So yes, again, we'll wave our arms, say there's lots and lots of problems. Yep, join the club. But I have yet to see one that can't at least be addressed by people working together and solving the things that can be solved.
Hi, I'm John Basic. I'm the director of the School of Health Sciences. You've emphasized collaboration. Excuse me. Certainly, you're no stranger to some of the challenges of getting collaboration on a university campus. What do you do to promote the kind of collaboration you're talking about?
Well, that's an excellent question. Thank you. Because, yeah, that's, first of all, we have much more siloed campus than you have here. At least that's my observation. So we have some very large and very persistent silos that needed to be broken down at the university. But you know, and I know, that all the significant things that people can do are interdisciplinary these days, be it grant opportunities, be it engaged scholarship, be it service learning projects for our students. They're almost all interdisciplinary now. And the days of a sole principal investigator, they're not over, but they're very limited. So I've taken two approaches, and again, this is something that I brought to the university when I came there in 2006, and they're now embedded in the culture. The first is a lot of incentives through academic affairs, but also through the graduate school, if it's a graduate program, to enable interdisciplinary projects to be pollinated and to keep going. So we very overtly have gone after dual degree programs, joint degree programs, early entrance into graduate school programs. We have a whole slate of STEM MBA STEM MBA programs right now that the students are clamoring to get into, which all I had to do was get the two parties together and facilitate those degrees. And not one of those had to go to the state, to the AIC, to what we call AIC, which is the equivalent of the Ohio Board of Regents. Because we finagled them in such a way that they were things we were already doing, we just repackaged them. So we were able to do them in real time. Don't have to do 18-month approvals and all that sort of thing. So part of it is setting the stage to enable collaboration to occur and facilitating it. And then I get very overt. What I'd like to do if I come here is something that I originated at UA that was never there before. We do a faculty orientation first year experience. And you may have read about that in my documentation. So we have a one-day orientation that I run that does do nuts and bolts issues, but it's based in that first day on you are going to develop as a teacher and scholar, and you have to do both. Oh, and by the way, there's a service component involved as well. And here's the things that you're going to need to be working on in the next several years. And then we bring in faculty who have just gone through P&T, and they answer questions on it and so on and so forth. But the big difference is that once we get to the end of the afternoon and we have our closing mixer, I say your challenge now is to meet 5 people out there that are not in your department and that you didn't know before. And you're not going to get your second cocktail or glass of wine until you have done that. So people have little name badges and they write things down. The idea is we overtly say you are now a member of the UA family. Yes, you were recruited as a biologist, a psychologist, an English faculty member. And yes, that's one thing that you're going to do. But you're also here as a member of this larger institution, and it behooves you, as a new faculty member, to get to know people in computer science, in health professions, in the School of Fine Arts, and develop collaborations that will advantage your career. So the icebreaker gets people going, and then during the year we have activities, some are just for the faculty and some are for their families as well, that further break the ice and break down the barriers. By the end of the first year, that cohort of 90 to 100 people, and by the way, it isn't just tenure track people. We open this up to part-time faculty who are going to be continuing in that part-time role. They're part of our family too. 100 a year over 5 years is 500 people who now have a family consensus building experience that they understand folks outside their division and are already working with them. So I've got now a third of the faculty at that institution who it is second nature to them to collaborate. Why wouldn't you collaborate? Of course that person over there has expertise that I need. Why wouldn't I get together with them? And it makes all the difference in the world. We set it up so that they can do that. And by the way, it's officially recognized as something important to do. So there's a place in their annual report. What kind of collaboration did you engage in this year in research, teaching, or whatever? It's not hidden. It's not a hidden agenda or anything else. It's overt in what we do. It works very well. So anything of significance that I'm doing at this point in my career, I'm not doing it as a lone wolf. I don't have the expertise alone to do virtually anything anymore. And I think most of us, if we're honest, realized that we could get into a working group and do far more things than if we work alone.
Hi, I'm George Ray, Director of the School of Communication. As you probably know, at Cleveland State, faculty are represented by a collective bargaining unit. Please comment as far as your general perspective on administration-faculty relations on a campus where the faculty are represented by a collective bargaining unit.
Thank you, George. It's a good question. I'm glad that comes up. I mean, obviously, if you look at my resume, I have never served on a campus that had a union collective bargaining group. With that said, I have served at every place that I've ever been since I was a first-year assistant professor, had a very strong and very advocacy-based faculty senate, staff assembly, and student assembly that was responsible for the law of the land. And that's where I'm at right now. I give annual, twice a year, I'm required to go to faculty senate and talk about state of the graduate school and academic affairs, and anything of significance that we in academic affairs would propose, be it a curricular issue, be it a research issue, be it funding, whatever, has to get passed by faculty senate. If we have a dispute, the first thing we pick up is the handbook that tells us how to deal with that dispute. And I do conflict resolution all the time. That's another thing that I didn't really put it in my CV. Most of the grievances that go into academic affairs where it says the provost's office will do this, that's me. I didn't go looking for that job, but it kind of found me. And so I'm all the time having to do conflict resolution between faculty and faculty or faculty and students or something like that. And I actually, in looking at your union documentation, especially the most recent iteration, I like what you have there. I would actually welcome working within a framework where the way in which we work together and the way in which we decide on salary and merit and all this thing is codified, then the situation where you have to kind of make it up as you go along, and every situation is an ad hoc situation. Let me give you one example that came up earlier this morning, because I think it's instructive. Somebody was asking me about curricular issues, and who owns the curriculum? Is it the faculty or who? And what do you administrators do telling us about the curriculum? Well, there's a lot of curricular issues facing this institution. And faculty are the stewards of the curriculum. If to do any less, you're abdicating your responsibility as faculty. That is what you do. And in terms of graduate faculty and the committees are the responsible entities for granting those graduate degrees. All I do as a dean is ratify them. Now, with that said, if faculty alone create a curriculum and don't work with students and don't work with administrators and don't work with the end users of our system, then the curriculum is going to be flawed. Students are not our customers. Students are the reason for our existence. Our customers, if you want to think of it, are all the people that depend on this university for educated students and for output in research and everything else. And so the stewardship of the curriculum is the faculty mandate, and you have to do it. Now, if you want to know how I handle it, let me tell you very explicitly. In program review, we have instituted a new step that is proving very, very advantageous on our campus, and I would like to see it happen here. We've been growing, as you know, very, very rapidly. 19,000 students 9 years ago. We have 34,000 now. We're probably going to be 40,000 before it's all over and done. We cannot hire enough faculty to keep up with that. We're adding about 25 new tenure track lines a year and about 25 full-time temporary instructors a year, and we still can't keep up. So every department is stressed out with regard to workload when it comes to teaching. How do you manage that? Well, I have faculty coming to me all the time. Well, you administrators are making us do all these course sections. And my response is, no, who schedules all those course sections that you're teaching? It's your job to look at that and advise us on how we can cut that down. So in my home department this year, as an outgrowth of program review last year, what we're piloting is something called faculty committee visions. Vision committees at the undergraduate level and the graduate level. The faculty take their curriculum apart and they look at who is teaching the classes, when they're being taught, and the enrollments in those classes, and who we're going to be hiring in the next year or two, and actually start making some hard choices about, well, gee, those two courses are awful similar. Why are we offering both of those courses every semester to 6 students? Do we really need to be doing that? We have 6 sections of this, and the enrollment is 30. We have only 2 sections of this, and the enrollment is 350. Should we be putting more resources over into here? And the net result is what the bio department's been able to do, and this is not me, this is the faculty doing this, has been to reduce by about 15% the number of sections they're teaching, but actually increase our capacity to handle majors by about 15%. And what that's done is freed up the equivalent of 2 faculty in terms of their service load, and that effort can then go into mentoring graduate students, mentoring undergraduate research people, writing grant proposals, all the other stuff that faculty need to do. Now, the only way you can do that is, as a faculty, coming to grips with what you're teaching and making some decisions about where you put your effort. But that's what I mean by that being a faculty prerogative that needs then to be communicated to the administration, okay? And then things like workload and all that enter into it as they would in your collective bargaining agreement. But the point is, then intelligent decisions can be made. Oh, we're doing degree audit systems now. We want people to graduate in 4 years. That means in their junior year, we better give them the opportunity to take this course, and this course, because those are the gatekeepers into our major. And then you have a plan that you can go 4 years down the road and tell an incoming student, yeah, if you do this, you'll get your degree. But we as faculty have to come to grips with how we spend our time in the classroom. So it's not just the curriculum in terms of 3 credit hours versus 4 credit hours. It's more global. Where do we meet our students, and how many sections do we teach, and where do we deploy our efforts? Okay?
Hi, I'm Barbara Hoffman, professor in the Department of Anthropology, and I'm very interested by what you just told us about your ideas about curricular reform and workload assignment. I had formulated questions about those things, but you already addressed them. But I do want to sort of give you some of the background that led me to think about these questions. In our department, we have done a lot of what you've already mentioned about reassessing what courses are being taught, who's teaching them, where we want to put our resources. And then we find ourselves confronted with what you, as a graduate of Kent State, must already be familiar with. We have somewhat of a hostile environment for higher education in this state in the form of a legislature that is currently considering legislation that would mandate adding 1 course to the workload of every full-time faculty member in state-funded schools for next year. We've already set our workload for next year, and it wasn't an easy process, and there are some people who are very unhappy with the outcomes. How would you envision dealing with both the internal issues and the external sort of general political environment that you would have to operate in were you to become our provost?
Yeah, well, if you're waiting for me to say, well, I know exactly how to solve that legislative problem, I don't have an answer for you. That's actually news to me about that. But every state, I mean, when I was in Ohio, we had our annual battles with the legislature, and Lord knows in Alabama they don't give a rat's you-know-what about higher education either. So as I said, part of it is further distancing ourselves in the funding sphere from the state budget. You have to do that. That's why I said, enrollment growth has to occur. We have to define how that works here, but it has to occur. Other sources of funding have to be identified. Scholarship monies need to be raised, all those things. all you can do in higher ed is keep hammering on the outcomes. And let me tell you one thing that, I can give you one example of how we try to counter that in our state. And I ginned up some numbers that we've gotten a lot of mileage out of. You know, in our institutions, it's similar. Access is number one. You people at UA are recruiting too many out-of-state students, and we want that to stop. Well, yeah, okay, give us the money, and we won't recruit so many out-of-state students. But what has really helped, we had one legislator that really was hammering on us for graduate education, wanted to get rid of any subsidies and all that to out-of-state students. Why are you supporting somebody from Georgia to come to Tuscaloosa for graduate school? So we said, okay, that's a very good question. Let us answer that for you. So we got our alumni numbers together, and I was able to show that, first of all, we had 65,000 living alumni with graduate degrees from the University of Alabama. And then we were able to tease out how many of those folks at the doctoral level and master's degree levels were from out of state and then relocated to the state of Alabama and have had their careers in there. And it turns out that it's several thousand people. So we were able then to calculate from the multiplier numbers that are available and have been recession adjusted that there was a $19 billion value added income figure over the lifetime of these graduates, just from our graduate school into the Alabama economy by virtue of them getting their graduate degrees. Number one, $19.2 billion. And that those 2,000 people that I said that came from out of state and are now relocated in the state means that we are a net importer of graduate trained talent for the first time in the history of the state of Alabama. It has never happened before that more people with advanced degrees were coming in than leaving. Now that is happening. That changed at least a few of those legislators' minds. Okay, I see this now. We're making an investment, and it's going to increase our revenue base because those people are going to earn higher salaries, they're going to create new jobs, so on and so forth. Thank you for that information. I withdraw my objection. Now, that's not going to work every way, and it's not going to work every time, but I think this university needs to get out front and say, yeah, we've got a problem with graduation numbers. Yes, we have a problem with retention numbers, and here's how we're going to fix it. And here's how we're going to benchmark that. And here's how we're going to show you that we're meeting our goals and making progress towards our goals. And that ought to buy at least a little bit of time. And again, I know you feel picked upon here, but I was at Miami with something else. They were always harping at us. And I venture to say if you're at the University of Toledo or wherever else, you're getting harped on for something else. And there's probably somebody in the audience that's going to put that in the newspaper. And that's what has to happen more in all of our town and gown relationships, is more honest dialogue between the media and the university. And you're not alone in that. So that's kind of a Weasley answer to your question, but that's all you can do is, here's why we do what we do. Here's the value to you as the state of Ohio or to the city of Cleveland. Here's how we're going to try to improve, and here's how you'll know that we're improving. And be very transparent and open about it. And you will still get people saying, we don't want to support higher ed because, after all, I only have a high school education and I did fine. Not much you can do about that. But you can say, again, here's the hard facts, and we think this is significant. Here's a patent that came from the working of a faculty member and a student that is making a difference in people's lives. Here's some work out in Lake Erie that is reducing pollution and therefore improving the sport fishery industry. Those are things that people can relate to. And you have to then get them out to the public.
I think with that, we need to conclude the forum. Thank you, Dr. Francko.
Well, thank you for your time, everybody.